Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. Happy Monday. I'm back home. Ari's on the road.
In my childhood bedroom.
Yes. What posters used to be back there?
There was the Britney Spears poster. The one with her in the schoolgirl outfit. I kind of still wish they would have kept that stuff up, but now they just painted it, and it's where my dad puts all of his old stuff. So not a lot of remnants of early Ari, but it still feels good. A lot of milestones in this bedroom.
I don't want to know about that. Well, actually, I do want to know about that. Were any of those playing the college football video game back in the day?
Yeah, I used to have.
It used to be called NCAA football.
A tube television right there, and I had my Sega Dreamcast. That's where the NFL 2K stuff would go on. And as I got older with the Xbox and the PS2 and all that, that's where this stuff would happen. So I am very jealous of your trip. Just everywhere you were in Florida this past week, but certainly your trip to Orlando. And I've got plenty of questions about the game and what you experienced. I was able to do that last year on a one-on-one visit with one of the makers of the game. And when I played it, I got a good sense for it, but the graphics weren't done. So there was like a lot of black boxes and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it like almost the finished product what you played?
So this one is an almost finished product. There's like, I didn't say what anybody's rating was because we were told they might not be done yet. So that was one. And last year was the same thing where the ratings were definitely not done when we did the preview last year. But last year, there was a lot more that wasn't done yet. I think because they had the game, they brought it back from the dead, they had a lot more to do last year. This year, the engine was already created and everything was moving. So there were a few things. Like I wasn't sure when I was looking at the coaches, like if they didn't have the real coach, was that because that guy's not in the game, or was that because they haven't gotten to load him yet? Like the Belichick one, he was never in Madden, so I'm assuming he's not doing this one either. So they have I want to say the North Carolina coach's name is like Hector Luna or something like that.
It's electric.
But yeah, I was hesitant to say if a coach wasn't in there because maybe they are going to be in there, or maybe they have, because the South Carolina entrance where they come into the theme from 2001 now, apparently they just got the rights to that song within weeks before what we got to play. So
yeah, and I was reading online over the weekend, Andy, that they're still in negotiations with Hard Rock for Miami's home stadium. I'm sure there's still some nuts and bolts that need to be ironed out, but for the most part, when you played the game, the players were in place, the graphics were in place, and everything was in working order. Yeah. So that's probably a better preview than I got a year ago at this time. So I'm excited to hear about that. I've got a lot of questions for you. And, I'm not necessarily sure, having not been a part of that or invited. Ben, what the hell's going on here, Ben?
You're sure. I already talked to them.
Yeah. So. I don't know what the hell's going on. That's something I got on an airplane for. But I am an avid player of the game still. I play this game, at home very often. And, it makes me feel connected to the sport. So I'm excited to hear about that. And I also know we're going to talk about some playoff stuff too. And I'm pretty fired up because you know what I realized on Thursday before I flew to Phoenix?
What's that?
A lot of the things that we say on our show that we find regular and our listeners accept, if you put that opinion out to Twitter, you get a lot of pushback, and I was kind of confused. So when we get to the playoff discussion, I want to talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Things that we say regularly that are just water's wet is actually controversial to a lot of people who don't listen to the show. So very excited to get into that. And
everyone should listen to the show, and it would all be a lot easier
because it'd be more contextualized. And as you know, it's hard to do it in 160 characters. But I had a tweet that made some waves that I want to discuss with you too. That came across one way, which wasn't how I meant it, and the other way. And I want to go over those things too. So we have a good show, I think.
We will start with the video game, but also with real life, because I got to talk to one of the cover athletes for the video game, Ryan Williams, the Alabama wide receiver, who is going to be one of the best receivers in the country this year. He was one of the best receivers in the country as a true freshman last year. You might have heard on one or two TV broadcasts that he was 17 during last season. But this guy is absolutely delightful, and I'm so excited to see the jump he makes year one to year two. I don't know, Ari, if there's ever been anyone as excited to be on the cover of this game as Ryan Williams is to be on it. You might have played Ryan Williams at some point in the last few months. He's that guy. He's you.
I play him. Well, I might have played him personally because I know he was up to 1 a.m. the night before your interview. But I play again in the game regularly, and it is a nightmare because they knew what they had in him going into last year. So kudos to EA. Another reminder that they know their recruiting rankings, they know their players, and they rated him accordingly. I think Jeremiah Smith was a little bit underrated, but Ryan Williams is almost unstoppable in the game, and I don't even want to know how good he's going to be this coming year.
I think he's going to be pretty great, and I think they've the other cover athlete, of course, Jeremiah Smith. I think they've got a full appreciation for him now too. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch and see where they go with that and how everybody matches up to their real life counterpart. But let's talk to Ryan Williams about being on the cover and about going to year 2 to Alabama.
All right, I have a confession to make. So before I came down here to talk to you, I was playing as Tennessee in Tuscaloosa in the rain.
Okay.
Now, they took one shot at you in the end zone. I had you double covered. I tackled you in the end zone. They did not throw a flag.
Wow. And we were in Bryant-Denny?
In the rain, yes.
That's crazy.
I know. Well, here's what happened, though.
Okay.
So I'm thinking I'm doing well.
Yeah.
And then they say, hey, okay, Ryan's downstairs. He's going to come talk to you. Ty throws the ball. Immediately, I'm like, oh, of course, Ryan's going to cook me right before.
Of course.
It's Isaiah Horton. But he scored.
He scored. Okay, yeah. That's perfect then. As long as the guys eating, did we win? Well, where we win?
You were going to win.
Okay.
You were playing me, so you're going to win. So, yeah.
Well, I'm thankful. I'm thankful, because and it's not always about me. I'm glad, my guys, they scored because he's going to be doing a lot of that this year. I'm super excited for him. Yeah, as long as the guys eating, I'm happy.
Now, because you are on the cover and you have an association with the EA people, how much of your teammates said, can you get my ranking up?
Bro, before I even came down here, that's what we were talking about. It was like just like try to tell me, like, you feel me, and like tell them to bump it up like 1 or 2 because I know they're gonna do me bad. I was like, bro, just put it on tape, and everything gonna work out. So it is what it is.
What you put on tape last year, though, not many freshmen can pull off, and of course Jeremiah too, and you two wind up on the cover together. Like, what do two guys who just dominated college football as freshmen talk about when they're on a cover shoot all day?
That's funny. Whenever we were in Pasadena, of course, we talked about last season and, him winning a national championship. I was super happy for him. But, we both agreed that, although last year was super fun, super great, and we both had a very good freshman season, we left a lot on the table. And we both agreed on that. And, just with that experience from last season, like we're super excited on what's to come this season.
So you're going into the season on the cover. Everybody knows your name. What was your relationship to this game last year before you were the guy on the cover?
Before I came today, I was on EA. I was on cut last night till 1 a.m. So if that doesn't justify it, I mean, I don't know what does. So 25, I probably have the most hours played on the team.
Did you play at all as a kid, the old game?
Of course.
Okay, that's what
10, 11, 12, because that was before that I was like still a fetus. So.
Oh yeah. No, my son is 15, so like he was 14 when the game came out, and he had no relationship to it before. And I just remember like 20 minutes in, he's texting his friends talking about how great the game was. When the game was coming back, what were the older people in your life saying about it?
Well, of course, my dad was in college whenever everything was going on. Then it was in 14, 13, all that time during that time. So he was just talking about, like, we talked about how he used to hold me as a baby and just play the game until 2 o'clock in the morning and just rock me. And he wasn't really studying me, but anyway, or he'll hand me a controller and he'll play the game at like I think I'm playing. So yeah, it was. So
this is like father, like son, staying up till 1 a.m. playing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's it's a lifestyle for sure.
Well, okay, since you play this much, you obviously don't play as Alabama all the time.
Cool.
You play as Alabama every time?
Of course.
Every time?
Every single time?
You don't have like a Sun Belt team or like a Mountain West team that you play as?
Okay, sometimes.
Okay.
I'll play as South Alabama because they're from the...
There you go. Yeah.
So I'll play as South.
Well, Kane Womack, your defensive coordinator, was the head coach there. Yeah. Major Applewhite used to work at Alabama. Yeah.
So I'll play as South. Well, most of the time, like here recently, I just been playing Ultimate Team. So
Who's your favorite player on Ultimate Team? Who's the one when you got him, you're like, oh, I got it now?
Well, whenever I first got my 97 card, that was like, yeah. But now, it's not me anymore. I'm gonna be honest. Jeremiah's card, his 99 card is different. It's 99 speed, 99 acceleration, and I go 5 wide, and me and him in the slot, and we just run seams. If it's single high safety, it's straight abusing.
I'm glad you didn't play on the same team. That wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, it wouldn't be.
That would not be fair.
I do on cut, everybody that I'm playing against, they quit by the end of the first half.
So you're just waiting for him to rage quit.
Yeah.
What's the nastiest thing anybody's ever said to you?
Can't even repeat it. It's very bad. It's very bad.
Well, congratulations, good luck, and your 99 card's coming soon, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. It was awesome.
Ari, Ryan Williams is like that all the time, by the way. He's not just turning that on for the cameras. Because sometimes you meet guys like this and, the interview starts and they're like, oh, yeah. And then they start smiling and they're happy. And then as soon as the camera's off, it's like, hey, I got to go. Ryan Williams was having so much fun at EA. He was like a kid in a candy store. And he really is that guy. And I heard him during another interview talking about the text message he got about being on the cover. And so he does the summary thing. Like your phone can summarize your text messages. And so his phone summarizes
me out.
Yeah. Well, I can't. I'm an old, so I don't do that because I just want to read the whole thing. But he does the summary thing. And so it pops onto his screen and it says, it's from one of his agents, and it said, or from an agent, he said, because he doesn't, I don't think he actually has a player agent. So he said, but it was from an agent, and he says, it says something like EA 26 you want, or something like that. Something very brief. And he's singing, of course I want the video game. What are you talking about? And so he opens the full message and finds out, EA would like to put you on the cover. Would you like to do that? And he's like, oh my God.
In what world is the answer to that question no?
Oh, Arch didn't want to be on the cover this time around, on the big cover with all the people, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I don't know why you wouldn't want it, but hey, listen, it reminds me of like sometimes when we get, it's like it was like our sponsorship with Panini when that was going on. For me, I was just like, yeah, do you want to be sponsored by Panini? Yeah, I do. Very much so. Who says no? Who loses in this scenario? But like, yeah, dude, like, I don't know if you get this sometimes. I feel this way a lot of times, like heading into the NFL draft, but we are around athletes and coaches and people in a really advantageous life position regularly, right? But there are certain times where I'll be like watching an interview like I did with the one that you did with Ryan, and I'll be like, God, what would it be like to be that guy? Like, young, handsome, charismatic guy, amazing football player, has the world on a string. And he just has his whole life ahead of him just to like enjoy all the fruits of his labor. And it's just like, he seems like a really good dude. I have met Jeremiah a few times personally. I've never met him personally. But he just like emits this like radiant, like happy energy that like makes you want to root for him. And there's people like that. There's some people where it's like, oh, this guy's an asshole or this guy's, really, really cool. I mean, like Matthew Golden, for instance, we met him. It's like, it's really, really hard not to root for him. Ryan gives me that kind of feeling. And I'm like really happy for him as a human because he deserves all the fruits of these labors too.
Well, and I think he strikes me as someone that people enjoy playing with, that they enjoy playing alongside because he probably makes practices fun. Oh, yeah. Games fun. He was also talking in another interview about how many autographs he had to sign after classes. And so he would sit in the back and thought that was the way to minimize distractions and that sort of thing. He said he wound up having to sign more autographs when he sat in the back. So now he sits in the front of classes because people are afraid to sit in the front of classes with him. And
that's hilarious.
It's just funny to hear that. And he plans to graduate from Alabama. He said it's very important that he told his family he's going to do it. And, we've seen a lot of athletes do that now, even if they only stay 3 years. So that's his plan. And like, he's got it all mapped out. it's really fascinating. And, we talked about Alabama last week. We talked about the quarterback decision they have to make. But Ryan Williams makes their quarterback decision much easier because whoever wins the job gets to throw to him, gets to throw to Jeremy Bernard. And all of a sudden, it becomes an easier transition to adjust to being the starter at Alabama. So I'm very excited to see what he does because he was so good as a freshman, but he was so young. And it's not like Jeremiah Smith where, Jeremiah Smith is a physical freak of nature where there just aren't people that look like him, that move like him at that size. Ryan Williams is a more standard sized receiver. He's just really freaking good.
Yeah, I think that we never talk about on the flip side of that, because you do mention that. We do mention a lot like, oh, how can Julian Sayin not be good? He's throwing to Jeremiah Smith. But the funniest thing to me is that, like, almost the bar is higher to be good because what's your excuse? Like if you can't thrive with a target like that on your team, then maybe you're just not very good at football. And it would almost be like, in the tractor truck discussion, it's almost like you don't have to be the trailer. The truck, you could be the trailer and be just totally fine. But if you're having a hard time out there with a guy out that can turn a 5-yard gain into a touchdown any single time he touches the football, and you're still having a hard time getting first downs, and that's a really bad reflection on you as a quarterback. So, like when you say it should be easier, yeah, in theory, you have a weapon out there. He opens up doors that aren't otherwise open for other quarterbacks, but you better be really good in that scenario, or there's something wrong with your game too. So, whoever they pick at Ohio State, whoever they pick at Alabama, even to some extent at Auburn, players that at the receiver position that open the field up so well with quarterback stuff. It's just like, like Dante Moore has a lot at Oregon to prove with Evan Stewart out there. I don't think Evan Stewart gets lost in the discussion. He is a sensational player. I know he was kind of hit or miss at times in his past, but he's a guy who takes the ball over the top of the defense and really opens things up too. And it's just like you have all these first-year quarterbacks who are stepping in as starters for the first time that have all these proven assets at the receiver position. You better be good. There's a lot of pressure there too. Yeah,
and that's the thing. If it's Ty Simpson, you have Ryan Williams as your crutch right away. It's a great crutch to have. If it's Keelan Russell, same thing. You're a freshman, but hey, throw it to the guy that can't be covered. So very exciting to see that because like you and I have talked about, that class, 2024 class of wide receivers could go down as one of the best in history. And Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith have already shown so much that they're on the cover of the freaking video game as sophomores. You just mentioned Auburn, Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo at Texas, who was behind some really good receivers like Matthew Golden, who you just talked about. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Because it's a very quarterback heavy year, but I do think that it's like within the realm of possibility, or it's not crazy to think that 4 of 5 Heisman finalists could be receivers from the same class. Now, it's probably not going to happen because if Ryan Wingo's a Heisman worthy player, then it'll be Arch that goes.
His quarterbacks, are going to get a lot of that shine.
But I do feel like it's possible that 4 of the 10 best players in college football in November are the top 4 receivers from that class.
Well, we saw it with Devontae winning the Heisman, and I think people realized Devontae Smith was the best player in college football that year pretty early on. So Ryan Williams could be that guy at Alabama again. Like we already seen it once in Alabama on a loaded national championship team, by the way.
How do we comp him? Do we comp him to Devontae in terms of playing style and explosiveness? Is that who we comp him to?
I think it's unfair to do that now because Devontae was so dominant his last year at Alabama.
But who does he look like when he's playing?
More like Devontae, a bigger version of Devontae.
Because Devontae doesn't get his shine at all.
Well, remember, Devontae was pretty good as a freshman, too. He caught the game-winning pass in the national title game as a freshman. But he wasn't as dominant as he was going to be. He developed over his career into a much more dominant weapon as the years went by.
I think that part of the problem with Devontae Smith, too, and it'll probably be a same type scenario for Ryan Williams, Andy, is that it's not something that's happening at Alabama that we haven't seen in the recent past. They've had so many elite level receivers come through there, like what Devontae Smith was doing. Maybe not. I think he was doing it better, but like Amari Cooper existed before him, and before him was Jerry Jeudy, and they had all these guys out there that
there were so many good receivers. there were so many good receivers at Alabama when Devontae was there that we were sleeping on him going into his Heisman season. Like, he had led the team in receiving yards the year before, and we were still sleeping on him going into that Heisman season because there was so, they had Jalen Waddle, they had Henry Ruggs, like they had so much. So, but you're right. It started with Julio Jones and that just one after the other assembly line of Alabama receivers, but it actually had kind of, there was a pause. There really was a pause between that big group with Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams was kind of the last one for a minute, and then it comes back with Ryan Williams last year.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about, too, how many players from the receiver position in the pros at Alabama who are actually in positions to succeed. Like, I know a lot of people gave up on Jerry Jeudy, but let me tell you, as somebody who's a reluctant person who follows the Cleveland Browns closely, they're going to be counting a lot on him this year. It's not going to matter because they're going to win 3 games no matter who's receiver on that team, but he's their number one, I think. So Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. Who am I forgetting? There's another one, right? Amari Cooper.
Well, Julio just retired.
Julio retired. Yeah. I mean, there's just like a lot of WR1s, right? Like, is that? And I just don't think that Devontae Smith gets the shine that he deserves in the NFL. He certainly got it in college. He won the Heisman. But like in the NFL specifically, I don't think that like he gets talked about in the same breath as like Justin Jefferson. And maybe he shouldn't. I don't know. Justin Jefferson's an alien. But like it's just, I mean, he was a very consistent and explosive playmaker on a team that just won the Super Bowl. And like, if you think about the Eagles, who are the players that pop into your mind first? You get Jalen Hurts. Of course, you get Saquon. I think Cooper DeJean is kind of a
AJ Brown
pops in your head. AJ Brown, like he's just like not somebody who
Jalen
like
Carter.
I mean,
they're loaded.
Yeah, they're
Lane Johnson.
Yeah, Keely Ringo.
Keely Ringo. That's right. Just name a Georgia defender.
Name a Georgia player. It's so funny to me though, because if you look at the Eagles, they are set up to be elite level, like Super Bowl contenders for the next 5 years because they're young and have a bunch of their players locked up long term. And like, I really do think that it's funny that they're like, yeah, do you see Georgia's defense? Let's just go get those. And it worked, and it will continue to work.
Well, and maybe they could do. You see Alabama's offense because Jalen, Jalen Hurts spent 3 years at Alabama. Like, he's probably like, hey, these guys are pretty awesome. They know what they're doing. So
yeah,
Devontae can say the same thing.
Jordan Davis is on the team too, isn't he?
Jordan Davis is on. Yeah,
or was on the team. I don't know.
No, their defense is very Georgia heavy. Their offense is not. But yeah, it's pretty funny how that works.
If like Alabama's offense like averages 49 points a game this year, and then like Tampa Bay Buccaneers decide they're just going to draft everybody from Bama's offense. It worked in college. We're just going to run their offense back. If you do that, what offense would you choose to do that for? That'd be a fun segment of like, if you could recreate the defense of a team in the NFL, like Georgia's defense from 2018 on would probably be the unit that you would choose from. What offense would you choose from?
Yeah. Remember, and also with the Eagles, Nakobe Dean and Nolan Smith.
Yeah.
Also,
and Nolan Smith are on the team. Yeah.
Okay. So I would go, can I do the 2020 Alabama offense, but with Jalen Hurts instead of Mac Jones? Can I do that one?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think Alabama would be a good place to start for this, given the discussion we're having.
But then, and of course, some of these guys go across years. So like, you could grab Ryan Williams in the draft and add him to it.
Yeah. I wonder, it's just like, Philadelphia's plan moving forward is to draft the best Georgia defender on the board every year for the next 10 years.
Yeah, just make your plan draft the best offensive player from Alabama as soon
every
as
year. It could be a receiver, it could be an offensive tackle, whatever it is. That's it would work.
Yeah, it's Caden Proctor this year. So you get Caden Proctor this year.
Yeah.
Next year you get Ryan Williams.
Next year. And then whoever the quarterback is, who's going to be a first round pick in 2 years. Keelan Russell in 2 years after that. And you have yourself that's called a unit, a core.
I love it. Ari, you've just gotten yourself hired as an NFL GM.
Yeah, and they say that job's hard.
It's not hard. Pitching Rhoback. I am wearing my performance hoodie right now. One of the most comfortable garments known to mankind. Telling you right now, go to Rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com. They got polos, Q-zips, shorts, joggers. They're all awesome. But this sucker, this performance hoodie, you got to buy at least 2, maybe more, because family members will steal them. My daughter has stolen 3 of mine. 3 of them. I will never get them back. She hides them in her closet so I can't find them. So just remember when you do that, there will be thieves, because this stuff is so comfortable. You can wear it anywhere, and you just feel great when you're wearing it. Rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com. Use the code Andy for 20% off your first purchase. Hoodies, polos, Q-zips, the shorts, great for the summer. The joggers are great in the summer too. They're lightweight, they're soft, buttery soft. I think Butterfeel is what they're going with. Rhoback.com, RHOBACK.com, code Andy for 20% off. All right, Ari. We talked a lot last week about the college football playoff, what it's supposed to look like going forward, what the different leagues want. It's interesting because the SEC leaves its meetings in Destin, I feel like, in a maybe a little bit different place than it started. The Big 12 had their meetings in Orlando, and they came out and said the thing that may not be the most convenient for them, but actually is probably the thing they need to say. And I wonder if it's kind of setting up a clash between the SEC and the Big 10. So let's go back to last week. So you had the Big 12 and the ACC have said they wanted this 5+11, 5 automatic bids, so 5 conference champs, 5 highest ranked conference champs, 11 at-larges in a 16-team field. Very similar to what happens now with the 12 team, except you just expand it to 4 more at-larges. But the Big 12, it's interesting because if you look at how this works, their other option is probably say, hey, we'll take what the Big 10 wants, and that's 4 auto bids for the Big 10, 4 for the SEC, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, 1 to the highest ranked of the other conferences, and then 3 at-larges. The Big 12 is probably going to get 2 in less if you do the 5+11 thing. But I liked what Utah AD Mark Harlan said to our friend Chris Vanini from The Athletic the other day. And he said, basically, we got to earn it on the field. He's like, we don't want to sign this saying we're going to be inferior to these other leagues. We want a chance to have as many teams as they have. Whether we get it or not is up to us. I appreciated that.
You know how I feel about that. It's the entire spirit of competition. It's the reason they play games. It's the reason why competition exists.
It actually makes me happy to hear people saying this, because I felt like we were getting more and more complicated. Everything was getting so far away from common sense. And we talked about it last week with the Lane Kiffin thing. Why not just best 16? And like, I understand wanting to have the conference champions in there, the 5 highest ranked conference champions. That makes sense because they're going to be in the best 16 almost every time anyway. So this essentially would be best 16. So that brings us to the SEC, which coming in, you could tell from Greg Sankey and the way he was positioning his rhetoric that he either wanted auto bids or he wanted some different selection criteria. And the auto bid thing made sense because that's what the Big 10 wants. The SEC and the Big 10 are kind of in cahoots. Sankey has wanted to go to 9 conference games in the SEC. The only way they're going to 9 conference games, according to a lot of the ADs, is if they have the auto bids, so it can't hurt them. But they come out of that meeting saying, you know what? Our coaches did not like the auto bids. Our coaches don't want to go to 9 conference games. So this 5-11 thing may actually be something worth talking about. And that'll get really interesting because the Big 10 does not want the 5-11.
You know, I was very interested in the information that coaches didn't want the extra conference game, because if you get the extra conference game with the protection, then what's the problem? Like, I'd love to know the thought process behind.
Well,
they're just wear and tear. They don't want. Well, I know. I can tell you why coaches don't want it. Gets you fired easier. It's another loss when you can schedule a win.
Okay, now I get you. But if you
So,
have the protection,
that's where
of
coach's
the four
mind
best
goes.
teams, the 4 best teams in your league are automatically in, then you have that extra security blanket for that extra game that might, it's like, it's harder, but then it's easier. You know what I mean? Like it kind of
and that's why they'll go to 9 if it's an automatic bid situation, because it can't hurt them. It takes the power out of the committee's hands.
I find it funny, and I think that the SEC will agree to this, that by and large, in most years, if we actually, in fact, do go to 16, the SEC will probably get 5 teams in every year. So by doing the auto bids, you're actually shortchanging yourself, unless you believe you're going to get the other automatic, you're going to get the
there's 3 at-larges there, so they think they're going to get one of those.
Get one of the at-larges, so maybe it's a wash. Yeah. But I feel like it's like getting volcano insurance when you live in Ohio. Like it's not a... It's like, I know it's nice to have, but like you're probably not going to need it. How many years are we going to go?
I agree with you there.
Field?
Here's where this is really interesting to me, because this is one of those leagues actually seeming to back away from the thing that might make it more money. Because I do think for the SEC's finances, the better move is probably push the auto bids, which does give you the 9th conference game, which gives you more money from ESPN, which does potentially create a Big Ten SEC scheduling alliance in the non-conference that allows you to sell games for more later. Like, all of those things, I think, make the SEC more money. But they're not necessarily letting that guide them here. So I find that somewhat refreshing, that they're at least listening to the coaches, or at least pretending to listen to the coaches a little bit, because it sounded to me when we talked to Sankey on Tuesday that he kind of just patted the coaches on the head like, hey, this is cute, but we got this deal here we're working on. But it sounds like the coaches got to the ADs and the presidents and said, hey, why not this? Why not just try to get as many in as possible? Because I think that's their attitude, is they can get a bunch in. Now, what they're saying now is they want to change the criteria for selection, which I'm not exactly sure how that works, because
this is when
I'll
like fired up, by the way. This is where I get fired up.
All right.
Like that.
I'm glad.
Okay.
Because I agree with you. And I had somebody come back at me the other day on Twitter saying, love you guys, but you're so wrong. The committee's so bad. They're always so wrong. And I said, okay, what other decisions would you have made in the top 16 in the last 10 years? Like, what did they get egregiously wrong in the top 16 in the last 10 years? Nobody can answer that.
Let me guess. No response.
I have to check. I don't want to shortchange the person. They might have responded.
It's an echoing of a talking point that doesn't exist. They heard the talking point, they're mad about it, and they don't know why they're mad.
You could go back to the BCS, which is humans plus computers, and take the top 16 from that, and it would be very similar. It would be almost identical to what the committee would do. So
yeah, because I saw the pamphlets and stuff in the forums that they were circulating about the strength of schedule and stuff like that. We're talking about that now, right? Because the thing that
go ahead.
The thing is that I want to know, and I'm going to go find it because, I got fired up on Twitter last week about this, but here's the thing from Ross Dellinger of Yahoo that got me going. Okay. Greg Sankey is laying the groundwork for a serious change to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's criteria, describing his conference as not like any other and its schedule that stands alone. I do think there is need for a change. How do you explain some of the decisions made? And I think that is the echoing of generalities that don't exist.
What decision they left Alabama out? If you go to 16, they'd be in.
No, I know, but is that the specific decision that we're discussing? Are we still discussing Bama from last year? I can't do it anymore. I'm going to pass out. I can't have that discussion again.
Well, they are, because it's their business, Ari. Like, their business is getting the most people in. So they're going to discuss it until it's different.
I think what happens, though, is that a commissioner who has the SEC's money at stake and at heart here has to say everything that he can to champion a cause that will benefit him and his business, correct?
Correct.
And it doesn't matter whether or not that statement is factually accurate, and he can say it all he wants, but on our show, I think that there's probably a large portion of SEC people who listen to it, and we appreciate that, but they hear the talking points that are false and they spit it back at you, and it's not a real discussion. It happens in politics all the time.
Well, here's
People
what they.
are freaking
I'll
out
tell
over
you
X,
what.
Y, and Z, and they're not even real.
I'll tell you what they'd like. What the SEC would like. They would like predictive power rankings to determine who makes the playoff. They would like S&P Plus, or probably something similar to your guy Tyler Shoemaker's index, because those will always favor the Alabamas and the Georgias.
Because those power
Always.
rankings take into account recruiting rankings. And the number one thing that people can't stand about the sport, and even me in our context of the sport, is they don't want to hear about recruiting rankings. I know there's a disconnect there because you kind of have to talk about them. You do. You can't ignore them, guys. It doesn't matter how far into NIL we get. But the thing that I don't like is we can use recruiting rankings as a metric to decide, especially in the preseason and through the season, how we rank teams. But ultimately, even a recruiting nerd like me wants to see the games played. You know, you can't play the games with the recruiting rankings. You can help rank, you can help understand context, but you still want to see the games. I don't want to ever get to a point where recruiting rankings supersede the results on the field. The results of the regular season is all the context and information we need. So by the time we get to December, the results are what stand on business, not the recruiting rankings are great now. They're great in August. They're worthless in December when you have context of 12 games or 13 games being played. So like this idea that we need to, and this is the thing that I alluded to at the beginning of the show. Can we go into that now for a minute?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the thing that you and I have discussed and said 1.9 million times on this show since we got back together in August is how the sport has evened out a little bit, how it's harder for Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State to have two deeps or players in their two deeps that don't play that could start or be All-Americans at other schools. It's a much harder proposition to field a super team, which is why we have discussed the death of the super team at nauseum, right? So I take this to Twitter, this discussion, which I thought was just saying water is wet. And this is what bothered me is that my response to the Greg Sankey laying the groundwork for serious change to college football selection committee's criteria was, what specific decisions is he talking about? Enough with the generalities. What are the decisions specifically that the college football committee has gotten wrong over the course of the past 10 years, and why? Nobody can say anything about that because there's no example. Here's my actual take, Andy. The College Football Playoff Committee has done a magnificent job outside of the impossible situation of the 2023 Florida State debacle. And I don't know if there's a single thing that I would change that they've done in the last 10 years. I also think that most non-biased people would arrive at the same conclusions with the data that was available to them at the time of those decisions. So, here's the thing that got people really fired up, and I want to get your take on this because you and I have not talked about this. This happened on Thursday night, and our show was in the can already. Do you think it is smart, as a person who lives in Gainesville and is very familiar with the SEC's dominance of the past 20 years, to change the criteria or how we go about selecting which teams get into the playoffs using data and results from a 20-year period where talent accumulation does not mirror how it goes now? My entire point of this, and I want to write it, I kind of wrote it a little bit with the Brian Kelly column, but I'll write it again, of the SEC was dominant from 2000 to 2020. The SEC had super teams, unlike every other conference during that time period. They won how many of the 20 titles? 15? I don't know how many it is off the top of my head. It's 14 or 15 of the 20 titles came from the SEC between 2000 and 2020. Do you feel comfortable changing the selection metrics moving forward, relying on that data? Because all those pie charts and all those graphs that we got in those nifty SEC, our schedule is unlike anything else, relied on data that I find to be antiquated at the present time. And I don't know if the Big Ten winning the last two national championships is enough of a precedent to change your mind. But as the current reality of our sport is that the Big Ten had more top-heavy teams last year than the SEC did. Whether people want to acknowledge that or not is up to them, but it's true. Do you want to change how we view the SEC and how we select the teams that go into the playoff using data that's no longer relevant to me?
I don't think they need to change anything. I think they should have the same 13-person committee, just pick 16 teams, and I guarantee you they're the same ones they pick anyway. They're
But
the
there is
same
a
ones your
discussion
computer would
about-
probably pick.
And this is just a quote from Dellinger.
Yeah.
Greg Sankey is laying the groundwork for a serious change to the college football selection committee's criteria.
What?
And you alluded to it earlier, using power ratings and S&P Plus.
Yeah,
and these
I
types
get
of
that,
things
which is
that
what
help
I've always
favor
said
that
is let
conference. And I don't think we can do
Vegas
that.
do it. I've always said let Vegas do it. This is letting Vegas. I never thought the people in charge would actually believe that.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm pushing back on any criteria changes. The criteria is fine. The criteria is working out great.
It's just ridiculous. And here's the ultimate problem. And Scott Strickland, the Florida AD, said this the other day at the meetings in Destin when he was talking to a bunch of us reporters, and he put it better than I've heard anybody put it. His thing, he said, people want objectivity in the selection, and it's not possible in this sport. It's not possible. You don't have enough data. Like the basketball selection committee and the baseball selection committee have 30 plus games of regular season play for all of these teams. They have double-digit non-conference games. So much data that can be reliably collected and turned into something. The NFL has rules that make it where it is really hard for one team to get that much more talented than another. And they have divisions and they have wild cards and they have ways that if you win this division, you are in the playoff. Like you don't have to wait for a committee to announce it. And everybody wants that. They want something that is like the NFL or the NBA, where if you finish with this record, then you are in. If you don't finish with this record, you are not in. But college football is not designed like that. The conferences are not equal. This is what also the SEC is trying to tell people. But because they're not equal, and because I personally would prefer they did not get to a point where they are in divisions like the NFL, and it's been cut down so much that we're only talking about the top 30 teams, in which case you might be able to make it fairly equal. I don't want that. I want it to be weird and complicated. And the only way to pick teams when it's weird and complicated is have some people pick them.
I mean,
or you can have a computer do it. But the thing is, if you have a computer do it, they're going to pick the same teams.
And the only way you could actually do it is by tearing down the conference alignments. You take the 130 whatever teams and you make 30 conferences and you split them up in a way that makes geographic sense, where Alabama is in the Sun Belt and Georgia, and you have 30 conferences and you play a 10-game schedule against those 30 conferences with X number of teams in them. You decide a champion with a round-robin schedule, and you just do it the NFL way. And then you have a 16-team or an 18-team playoff where the conference championship from the regular season goes and wins the championship during the regular season, then goes on to the playoffs. The problem is that we cannot do that because there's 12 teams in the SEC that believes that they can compete for a national championship in a given year. And as long as they're not playing each other, or you can only take one conference champion from a group of that's that deep, you can't do it. But if you took SEC away and you took Big Ten away and you put the group of five and you mixed them all in together, the group of five might become the new cellar dwellers, but everybody's in an even conference across the board. Then you could just make an NFL system and play it that way. But you'd have to give up all the television rights. You'd have to tear it down.
Everybody says they want that objectivity, but the second you do something that makes it more like the NFL, but we don't want the NFL. Okay. If you don't want the NFL, then you also don't want an objective way to determine who makes the playoff, because that's how you get that.
But could you get to a place in this theoretical spot, like if I were the czar of college football and I could change anything I wanted and money didn't matter, where you would have Alabama and Appalachian State in the same technical conference, and you would put everything together, and there'd be cellar dwellers and there'd be favorites, and those two teams play every year, and it'd be up to App State to try to do their best to do. But most years, much like the Steelers win the AFC North most years, or the Ravens, and the Browns are the bad team. There are good teams and bad teams, but everybody starts week one with the same schedules. Oklahoma and Texas are in different conferences, and there's like one major power at every one, and everybody has a chance to win it on the field. And you have 20 conferences, or however the math would break down. It's a bad math breakdown. But that's
Because
what
those major powers
you could make
beat the crap out of people in the regular
I know
season.
you would have the same division winners every year, probably, where LSU would win the Cajun conference and whatever, however you want to name them, and then you would have a 20-team playoff at the end of the year with the teams that won their conferences. There'd be no objectivity. Everybody had the same fair shake, and you'd have a sterilized version of our sport. Is that what you want?
Nope.
Does anybody want that? That's part of the reason why I didn't want the playoff to expand.
But that's the
like
thing. Everybody tells you they want something objective. It's not possible
in the current system
with the sport.
It's possible
as it's
if you tore
constructed
the whole sport down. Yeah.
Correct. The Super League would make it more possible, but we don't want the Super League. Like, I mean, maybe some people do. I guess there's some TV executives that want the Super League. I don't want the Super League.
Unless you could create a Super League where I don't want the Super League because I don't want the Oregon State fans to be half the country. I don't want Washington State fans to be half the country. And actually, Cole Kubelik had me on a radio show last week on his show, and they asked me about it. And it just kind of struck me as bizarre because I don't know. Like, let me ask you this, because we do talk about this quite a bit. But if you were to take, you know how I go on my diatribe about Arizona fans, and I'm like, what's the point sometimes of like showing up every day and bleeding, red and blue and hoping you're knowing in the back of your heart or in your soul that you can't win the national title.
Bear down. Yeah.
If Arizona was relegated to a smaller league and you had a Super League of 64 teams and you had the Tier B League, whatever you would want to call it, the Magnificent League, and the national champion or the playoff participants in the second tier league got promoted to the Super League, and the Super League's last place teams got relegated down, then they could still be a part of the same system. But like, would an Arizona fan celebrate a national championship of the beer team league the same way they would? Like, the thing to me is like, I feel like maybe I'm talking out of school here. But
the championship, which is the second division in England, it's the one below the Premier League. They get good crowds. I mean, they get thousands and thousands of people at their games.
But do you think an Arizona fan or a Boise fan or a fan of a team that, can be really, really good at times, but probably isn't good enough to win the national championship? I think Arizona and Boise belong in the same sentence. Boise is a much more accomplished football
They did
program,
play each other in that Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is do you think that they would be happier in a system where they actually have a chance to win it all? Or do you think that they're happy with hoping that they might be good enough to play against the big boys one day? Like, what's more fun?
I think they like the hope. I think people want the hope.
They'd rather be a guppy that might eat enough fish and get big enough to one day. Because like the thing is, like, Boise, what's more gratifying to Boise? Like getting to the 16 team or the 12 team playoff and playing a competitive football game against Penn State, or beating somebody like Wyoming in a championship in a league that doesn't include the big dogs? Like, what do you think is more fun to them? I don't even know the answer to that because I'm not one of them. But what's more fulfilling as a fan?
Yeah, and we've asked that, and I had Appalachian State fans answer me with beating Michigan was more fun than winning the FCS national title. So,
because everybody wants to be a part of the big thing. But I guess if you made a 60-team Super League and a 60-team B-tier league, and there was some interchangeability with relegation.
You got to move that L.
Relegation. I'm not by the way, my wife's in Paris for a shopping trip this weekend. That's why I'm in Arizona right now. And she landed yesterday and had no idea that this parent PSG was playing for the Champions League final. And Paris is like on fire right now. I was like, hell of a weekend for you to choose, by the way. Completely on fire. By the way, yes, my wife is on it. If you heard that right. That's what happens in my life. Yeah, so soccer is interesting, and I think that the relegation system is interesting.
But I don't think anybody would do promotion and relegation in America. I don't think anybody would go for that. It would be very interesting, and as for us, it would be fantastic. Great for shows, great for watching. Not great if you're the person who has to do the budget for somebody who's at the bottom of the tier 1 or the top of the tier 2, trying to figure out where you're going to be in 5 years.
Yeah. I just don't know. Like the thing is, like I think we should poll the people who root for the teams that are going to be on the outs to see what would be more fulfilling for you.
It's a great question. So let us know. You guys know where to find us on social media. Andy_Staples at Ari Wasserman. Like if you're a Boise State fan, or if you're a fan of maybe a team that's in a power conference now that might not be in a super league, depending on where they put the cut line, would you rather be in something more similar to what happens now? Or would you rather be in a division where you could be the top dog?
Talking to you, Indiana, was this past year worth being terrible for 25 years, or would you rather have a chance to win your conference every year on a lower level? What was more fun?
I think I know what they're going to answer.
I do too. I think last year.
I think I know. Yeah, I think they'll take last year. I just, and I get it. Like, I had somebody ask me on Twitter, and I didn't get a chance to respond because I had to do something, and so I'm sorry to I was Buckeye InfoWars, but here, if you're listening, here's my response. I don't want a super league. I've resigned myself that it probably is coming because I've gotten cynical watching everybody tear down the fabric of the sport over the last 20 years, and accept that people are going to chase money, but I don't want it. If there was a way to keep there's 136 FBS teams now. Now, do they all need to be in there? I don't know. But most of them, yeah. I love that it is this broad, and there are this many schools, and there's these cool stories and these fun games. Like, I love that part. I don't want that to go away, and I get it. Like, I get the math of it, because we have the people, Ari, who will tweet at us and say, well, they would disenfranchise half the fans in the country. No, they wouldn't. Like, I know the math. Like 80% of the viewership is coalesced around about 25 teams. So I get where they're thinking.
We're living in a place where two power fan bases were left for dead already.
Yeah, Oregon State and Washington State.
It's already happened. So you want to do it to 60 others?
I don't. And I'll be interested because I think this is sort of the war here with the 5 and 11 and the auto bid scheme. The auto bid scheme is one step closer to the Super League because you make the Big 12 and the ACC essentially sign a form saying we are inferior. It would be the first time you ever made a conference admit that on paper. The other one doesn't make you do that. It still leaves that glimmer of hope. I would like the glimmer of hope to stay.
Indiana had a really good year last year. Indiana has a dog of a coach who is confident they're going to be great. Indiana fans aren't done now. They feel like their team should be in the top 15 somewhere. They have a lot of really good players. What if they make it again? What if Indiana, systematically gets better year over year over year, and all of a sudden in 15 years, our entire viewpoint of Indiana football is completely different? Aren't they the people that stand for why Super League sucks? Because
they'd be in the Super League because they're already in the Big Ten.
No, I know, but I'm saying but they are the example of afterthought in football for decades. Right coach comes in, figures it out, and all of a sudden they are built into something.
I think Utah is a good example of that, Ari.
Yeah.
Utah is in the WAC, then they're in the Mountain West, then they get in the Pac-12, and they were winning throughout the periods of time in all of those leagues. They were definitely winning in the Mountain West when they got into the Pac-12, and they get in the Pac-12, and they don't become a doormat in the Pac-12. By the time the Pac-12 is about to implode, Utah's the best program in the Pac-12.
And they keep, and who knows? Who knows what's going to happen this year? They took a step back from a conference elite standpoint, but
they could be good in the Big 12. And what if they start winning consistently in the Big 12? And so I would like that glimmer of hope to stay. I don't have a lot of optimism having watched these people run the sport for 25 years professionally now, but it does make me happy that at least there's some thought being given to because the coaches are competitors, and they looked at this thing and they're like, the 5-11, that makes a lot more sense as a competitor. Now, know how much of that's the SEC coaches going, we just don't want to play 9 conference games. But I don't think that's really it. Because I think like Kirby Smart last week was like, no, we're going to keep scheduling good non-conference games no matter what. So
good.
Like, I think a lot of those coaches just want to play and compete, and they look at the different formats and they're like, well, this one makes the most sense because it just puts like, you don't put any weird artificial restrictions on it. You're just like, here's the best teams, go play. So I hope that's what happens. I'm curious to see how the SEC and the Big Ten reconcile this. Maybe the SEC just comes around because the Big Ten wants the SEC to play 9 conference games. The Big Ten has been very quiet through all this. The SEC can dominate the discourse. They have set up their spring meeting where we're there. All the reporters are there. Everybody's talking. They dominate the news for a week. The Big Ten had their meetings. Nobody was there because they don't talk to anybody. So now I think part of that has been intentional, is let Greg Sankey and the SEC be the bad guy for this auto bid thing. But and I don't know. It's Monday, so I'm not putting on my tinfoil hat, but kind of I am. Maybe Greg Sankey's like, you know what? I'm going to make Tony Petitti come out and say this. I'm going to make him say they want the auto bids and here's why. And he can be the bad guy about this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
because they want it.
Tinfoil Hat Tuesday is coming right around the corner, Andy.
Tinfoil Hat Tuesday's tomorrow, Ari.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. So before we go, one more thing. The National Football Foundation is releasing its list of candidates for the next Hall of Fame class on Monday. We learned last week there's been a tweak to their eligibility requirements. Instead of having to have a .600 winning percentage as a coach, you can now get in with a .595. That means that Mike Leach is now eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. I can tell you right now, he's getting it. Mike Leach is getting into the Hall of Fame next year. I don't have a vote. I don't know all of the people who have votes, but I assure you he's getting in next year. Another interesting piece of this, Ari, it actually allows Kirk Ferentz to get in with his current winning percentage. He has a .596 winning percentage. I believe, I'm bad at math, but I believe with a pretty good season this year, he would have made it over the old threshold as well. But so Mike Leach, Kirk Ferentz. I'm interested to see what the other names are. Maybe on Tuesday's show we have a discussion about which of this bunch needs to get in the Hall of Fame.
That should be a good discussion. Also on Tuesday we can open up with, do you think it's stupid that there's a minimum winning percentage when the mark on the sport that you have doesn't necessarily have to be reliant on that, depending on where you started and how big of a hill you had to climb to get somewhere?
I will tell you, as soon as the news came out that Leach was going to be eligible, I had somebody reach out they tagged all of us who do college football podcasts, and I thought it was a really interesting one. Howard Schnellenberger, still not eligible under the new one. But Howard Schnellenberger created what we know now as Miami.
You're a much better college football historian than me, but I wonder how many coaches, because I didn't even know that about Howard Schnellenberger. But when I think that it's stupid to limit the people who are eligible based on win percentage, because there are people who have had profound impacts on the game that don't meet that threshold that I think are worthy of that. How many, I don't know, let me ask you this, in 100 years, who do you think is going to be more remembered for football, Urban Meyer or Howard Schnellenberger? I don't know, maybe Urban Meyer had
they're probably going to be
win percentage.
Yeah, they're probably going to be
not
equal.
Just win percentage; it's impact in cultural and creating a program, creating an image. If he's the person who created the U, how many games do you have to win outside of that to be worthy of that?
Right.
You created the U.
He also resurrected Louisville's program and created the program at Florida Atlantic. So
he did some things.
Yeah. So it's interesting. That's a great point, because that was the argument with Leach. Is Leach had such a huge impact on the game that it almost didn't matter what his winning percentage was.
Yeah. What about people who had bad records but revolutionized offensive football?
Yeah, or just took over a program that was terrible and had to lose a lot of games before they could win any games. So there's a lot of wiggle room there, and maybe there just needs
You
to be a
might know
different.
names. You might know names. I don't think I would have known that about Howard Schnellenberger, but like maybe there are other guys out there that would fall under that criteria.
Well, Schnellenberger is a really interesting one because if Schnellenberger doesn't leave Miami when he does, he probably wins a few more national titles there. And then we're not even probably having that discussion. It's probably he's just in.
He's been in. Yeah.
But yeah. So he left to go to the USFL. Very poor timing because the financing of that league was crumbling, and so it was a bad deal. But yeah, it's interesting, and you put it the right way. It's what impact did you make on the game? And
also, like Kirk Ferentz, that's a shoo-in to me. A shoo-in.
Well, if they hadn't made this tweak, if he just had a pretty good season this year, not a great one, and then retired or whatever, he wouldn't have made it.
It's stupid.
Now he can make it, though. I think if Iowa has a really good year this year, he would have made it anyway. But
I kind of feel like it's like the playoff discussion. It's like, are you worthy or you're not? Like, we don't have to like make all these false like pretenses. Just vote the 16 best.
Well, we'll get our chance. So the list comes out after our show Monday. Tuesday, let's talk about it. Let's figure out who should be in the Hall of Fame.
Sounds good, man. Well, hey, I love it. I love it when the show. Sorry, I messed up your out. I love when we have our show propped up to us on a platter. Go ahead and do your thing, Andy.
It's beautiful, beautiful. It is on a platter. Ari's happy. He's in his childhood bedroom. He took his daughter to his beloved hometown pizza place. What a life! What a life! Teaching them the valuable lessons early on. Hopefully, we learned some valuable lessons today. Tomorrow, let's figure out who belongs in the Hall.